His name is Ash Karmansky. He's a progressive, independent journalist fighting for systemic change in the UK. Aren't we all, Ash? Aren't we all? Let's clear up the name first. Are you in Preston, in Lancashire? Is that the reason for the name?
That is the reason for the name, yes. Evening, George, and evening to everyone. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, that is the reason for the name. It's because I didn't want to use my name in the title, even though it's out there anyway. But it's just to keep my private life separate from my work life. That's why I did that.
Yeah. Well, you see, I made the mistake originally, and it worked out in your favour, of thinking it was Peston journalist. I misread it. Peston is, of course, the pestilential, now ITV political, I suppose you'd call him a journalist, a broadcaster, a sofa host, and he's extremely annoying. So when I saw your title at first, I thought this was something to do with Peston, but it wasn't, and it was exceptionally good work. Now, you looked at the local elections on Thursday. What's your takeaway from it?
Oh, as you just correctly said, Labour were, the PR machine was spinning. It was going to be a night of victory after victory. One source said they were going to get between 500 and 800 new seats, take over 16 new councils, and they got absolutely nowhere near that. I think their total in the end was something like 120 odd plus councillors that they got, and took control of about 6 new councils. So Keir Starmer is obviously trying to spin it.
Yeah, but Ash, they lost control, not just of several councils, but 2 in London, where when they failed outside of London, they tried to make London emblematic until the results came in from Croydon and Tower Hamlets, my old stamping ground. They won control of 3 boroughs in London, incidentally, the richest boroughs in London.
Yep.
Mayfair is now Labour territory rather than Conservative, but they simultaneously lost control of 3 working class boroughs in London, 2 of whom have got directly elected mayors. So it was even worse. They lost control of the council and lost the powerful directly elected mayors. So if they did so badly, who did well?
You'd have to say the only party that can really claim to have done well are the LibDems, certainly in England anyway, because they are very often, as you know, I'm sure, the protest vote, the go-to protest vote for people. And I think that's exactly what happened, as you correctly said. And I've used your quote myself before, 2 cheeks of the same backside. We've basically got a duopoly, as you well know, that is almost a Labour-Tory coalition. And that's what we've had for the last couple of years. And again, as you just highlighted, this is the party that was set up to represent working people, for the have-nots, to make sure they have a good quality of life, workers' rights, etc. They've now lost working-class towns such as Hull, but have now taken Mayfair, probably the most affluent area in the entire country. And I think that tells you a lot.
Perhaps in the entire world. Perhaps the entire world.
Possibly.
But they lost, I think that tells you a lot. They lost Hull, and they lost Tower Hamlets. They lost 22 seats in Tower Hamlets. And they lost control of Croydon and Harrow. Not to mention the Red Wall. I saw a result, I think, from Walsall, just before I got into the studio, a late result, which showed a fall in the Labour vote of 15%. Now, I don't want to get too anatomical, but if the Tories and Labour are 2 cheeks of the same backside, and the Liberal Democrats are some way between them, what does that make the Liberal Democrats?
It's a very good question. I've always called the Liberal Democrats Tory light, because that's the way I see them. I think they are basically yellow Tories. That's the way I see it. And you've basically got a lot of parties now that are all singing from the same hymn sheet. Yes, some people aren't happy with the government, but there's also an equal amount, I think, not happy with Labour, not happy with the Lib Dems. What's the difference between them, George? I don't think anybody could really find, you can't put a fag paper between their beliefs. It's all about this green agenda. It's all about more lockdowns and more restrictions on lives. and they all believe the same thing. Whereas go back years, of course, they had very different stances on different things. You've now got conservative socialists in power who are raising taxes left, right, and centre, big state, which is what Labour used to be about, at least sometimes. But now they all just agree with each other. It's the state that people are sick of.
There's cross-dressing going on, isn't there?
Yeah,
Sometimes
very much
Labour are more authoritarian than the Conservatives. Sometimes the Conservatives are more big spending, at least in their announcements. I don't know if the money ever really gets there, in a kind of old Labour way. The Liberal Democrats turn out, like liberals everywhere, to be tyrants once you scratch them, screaming for more and more authoritarian control. I mean, Facebook is now virtually a prison camp. I hope they don't switch me off for saying that. Who's in charge of the politics of Facebook? Sir Nick Clegg, the former Liberal Democrat Deputy Prime Minister of Britain. So with all this cross-dressing going on, did it surprise you that the real winner of the election were those that didn't vote at all? The great majority of the people didn't vote for any of them.
It didn't surprise me that turnout was so unbelievably low. Why? I mean, it's harsh to say, and I respect you as an ex-politician, of course, but trust in politicians has never been fantastic, of course, and expectations are sometimes low. But the fact that people aren't going out there to vote just shows you how low trust has sunk in these people, and how little faith the public really have in them. And the duopoly, which I always talk about a lot, is the problem for that. And there's massive change needed in this country to try and give at least some parties a chance to get representation in there, because as you know, people are too scared to vote for maybe yourselves in the Workers' Party, although you did very well in Batley, of course, or they won't vote for any other fledgling party, if you will, because they're scared of letting a Tory in, or they're scared of letting a Labour MP in, and they've got complete and utter control of the whole system. And as long as we have the first past the post system, I don't believe that is ever going to change. It's sad to say.
I think you're bang on there, Ash. My wife, as you know, comes from Amsterdam. They have a proportional representation system. There's a pensioner party, got MPs. There's a cat lovers party, standing for animal rights, which has got members of parliament. Basically, if you get 5% of the vote, you get 5% of the seats. If you get 10%, you get 10% of the seats. In our country, if you look at Farage, for example, both when he was at UKIP and then when he formed his own party, the Brexit Party, they were polling millions of votes and getting no seats, because the first past the post system nails down the status quo. And the problem is, I don't need to spell out a perspicacious young man like you, to change that would require those who benefit from that system to agree to change it.
And turkeys do not vote for Christmas, do they? I've never met one that will anyway. And that's the problem. These people are very, very comfortable. A lot of them have, as you know, big majorities. My local MP, for example, is Nigel Evans. If he wanted to stay there till his dying day, he could. He will never, ever lose his seat because his majority is so big. And the same can be said for a lot of these people. So I believe they believe they can basically do whatever they like, as long as they show up once every 5 years to pick up your vote in a general election. And then you won't see them again for another 5 years. And that's the way our system, as you said, it breeds the status quo. It doesn't allow for new people to come in. And there's simply no way of changing the system the way things stand now.
And that was bad enough, Ash, when the three parties actually were discernibly different. When the three parties are all the same, that becomes an elected dictatorship. That becomes a one-party state. Different cheeks, they pretend to hate each other and all that, but trust me, once they go through the swing doors out the chamber, they're very far from hate each other. And so we've got a stasis here in this country. The country isn't working. And the political class can't, won't make it work. And the media, and I want to turn to the media now, the media feeds off that political class, feeds into that political class, and has no interest in changing things either. In fact, they can be reliably relied upon to do the bidding of the establishment parties. What can we do about the media? You have done wonders. You write marvelous. That Preston report is excellent. How did you get the idea to start doing this, and how is it going?
It's going really well at the moment. I've just hit over 7,000 subscribers, which, you know, much like
Very
yourself,
good.
I don't really have a budget or anything. I just started doing this because I was sick of seeing the same old dross in the mainstream media. As you just said, they all say the same thing. They never really hold anybody to account. And if anything, people are, well, they are switching off in their drawers, but I would encourage most people to simply switch off and watch programs like yours or videos like mine. And, you know, you get a different perspective. How many working class people do you ever see on the BBC or on ITV? It's unheard of. And these people, like, you know, I've got a full-time job as well. This is a second job to me, if you will. You've obviously worked in your life, and lots of people on YouTube have as well. And it's not like we're born to the upper classes, if you will. Like a lot of these people are, who sit there and preach to us about going green or about more lockdowns and face masks, and which the majority of the public do not agree with. So the only way to really stop this, the way the media agree with everybody, is to really just switch off and don't watch them. And that's the only way they'll ever get the message.
And that's what people are doing. I mean, the non-voters are the majority. And I talked in my monologue about the sofa politics shows on ITV, BBC, Sky, and just one or two others, including the new Talk TV, Murdoch's latest venture. But nobody's watching them. They still get advertising revenue, and of course they all have a budget, a massive budget. In the case of the BBC, if you don't provide them with that budget, you go to prison. Even Stalin never thought of that one. But people are not interested. And I read a piece this week. We've got Peston as opposed to Preston. We've got the Andrew Marr show, as was whoever's doing it now. We've got several of these shows, but they're all interviewing the same people who say the same things on every sofa, every week, on every channel. Now, none of them, for example, none would invite me on. As it happens, I now wouldn't go on because I've got a far bigger audience than them without having to go there, travel across London to be insulted. But when I would have gone on, they never brought me on. And I'm just using me as an example. They wouldn't have you on, they wouldn't have anybody on who's outside what I call the dictatorship of the prevailing orthodoxy. Dr. Johnson said, the grimmest dictatorship of them all is the dictatorship of the prevailing orthodoxy. And that's the dictatorship we're now in. How can people follow your work, Ash?
They can find me on YouTube at that Preston, Preston, journalist. And obviously all my videos are up there for anybody to watch. We don't ask for any money or anything like that. So it's obviously all completely free. There's no memberships or anything. So anybody wants to come and find me, feel free. And I hope everyone enjoys the content.
I really recommend it. Thank you, Ash, for coming on the mother of all talk shows.